Okay, I'll just give it a few minutes for folks to join us, and then we'll get started. Mm. All right, we'll get started. Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us for what I know is going to be a very informative hour, a fascinating hour, I think. I want to thank our series sponsor, the Job Gym. They've been a great partner to us, the Chamber of the Years, for all of our employment and training needs. I'd like to introduce Amanda Shannon from the Job Gym to say a few words.
Dolores. Welcome everyone this afternoon. Looking forward to today's Lunch and Learn with Amanda and Brian. Quick word on what Job Gym can do for you. This is actually an exciting time for us. We do have locations throughout Niagara and deliver a few of the Employment Ontario programs, one of which being the Canada Ontario Job Grant Program, which just received an infusion of money on April 1st. So if anybody out there is looking to upskill their existing workforce, you can apply as a business for up to $10,000 per employee to send them to a third-party trainer. So if you're interested in more information about that, please connect with me anytime. But in the meantime, I'd like to turn things over to Amanda and Brian from B4 Networks. They're going to share with us today some practical ways to use AI in your business, discuss some of the legal considerations all businesses should keep in mind, and some general thoughts on how you can use it in your business, including things like sales operations and accounting. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over.
Okay, thank you. So we'll just go through the format real quickly. Our presenters will go through their presentation. You can submit your questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. All of the questions will be addressed at the end of the presentation. So we'll do it that way. All right, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to both Amanda and Brian. Take it away, guys.
Thanks, Dolores.
Thank you, Dolores. Okay, so I'll get started. I just want to prefix this with AI is such a huge topic, and it's a very large amount of information that can be conveyed. So we focused our efforts today mostly on ChatGPT because I think that's the piece that most people are familiar with. And at some point in time, we would like to do some more videos and some more information on how you can use things like Copilot and Microsoft Office 365 and all the different AIs that are available publicly. A lot of them are paid for applications, but there are some AIs that are not, they're free to use, and we'll touch on base on that. So before we get started, so yeah, today we're going to be talking a little bit about three different things. The very first one that we want to talk about is just some of the legal implications to consider before jumping in. And should you use AI in your business today? And lastly, we're just going to go through some practical applications of where you can use AI in your business. So again, just some quick areas and some quick snapshots of different things that you can do. And I'll have some, hopefully some audience participation where you can submit some information. So with that, actually, yeah, I just wanted to jump in here first. So we are going to be having some participation. So if you can submit some topics on articles that we can generate, Dolores will pick one or two topics, and I'll show you some practical examples of how we can use that down the road, but I wanted to get this out first so that we have them ready to go for when we get to that part. Amanda.
So I'm Amanda LaChapelle. I actually co-own B4 Networks with Brian. I'm also on the Chamber Board of Directors, and my role in the company is Chief Operating Officer. So I get the pleasure of managing the managers and the higher level staff here, and figuring out how we kind of make everything work together, as well as interfacing with our vendors and community partners. So basically, I love to talk a lot, and I'm also a person who kind of uses process and procedure to create consistency within the organization. And it's kind of what I bring to this talk today as well.
Excellent. My name is Brian LaChapelle, the CEO of B4 Networks, but I like to basically most of my time and effort is spent, dealing with business owners and the challenges that they face. It's IT and technology is such a challenging thing, and most business owners find it very, very frustrating when things don't go the way that they're supposed to with technology, and I help them make those problems go away. So most of my efforts and most of my time are spent dealing directly with business owners and how they can use technology to improve their business, and more importantly, not just fixing the problems, but using technology as a strategic advantage for their operations. And AI is it. AI is going to be the big thing, I think. So let's jump in. So a couple other things about Amanda and I, we co-author a lot of different reports that are designed specifically for the medium and enterprise market. So if you have any interest, dive into our website, b4networks.ca, and you can go ahead and grab some of our reports. And I'll let Amanda jump in here as well.
So part of, being that person that I mentioned before in terms of my bio is finding gaps. And one of the gaps that we found internally was just helping the admins that would join a technology company and figuring out what all the words are that we use and all the acronyms and stuff like that. So I actually started a podcast last year called That's So Tech, where a bunch of us admins from B4, people who were not technical in nature or maybe weren't once upon a time, but are now, come together and we just kind of discuss and learn together. It's kind of funny. We make fun of each other a lot. We say the answer is wrong. So if anybody's looking to learn more about stuff like what is the cloud or different aspects of your infrastructure, you can take a listen to that. I also speak at industry events on how to run companies like ours, or how to encourage, good employee engagement, or how to, structure your culture so that it's welcoming and inviting. I come from a background of running my own business before, helping Brian out in this one originally before I kind of stepped into that co-owner role. And that's a photography business. So a lot of the pieces that I'll be speaking on today speak specifically to copyright because it's something I'm very familiar with in that aspect.
So for me, I made it a mission of mine this year to get in front of as many people as I possibly can to discuss IT and cybersecurity specifically. Cybersecurity has become such a huge topic in industry, and if you aren't taking it seriously, at some point you will get hacked and things will go awry. So I've been participating in different podcasts to break down some of the previous hacks and talk about how business owners can protect themselves from all the nasty people out there with regards to that. So I won't dive into that today, but if you're interested in having a conversation about cybersecurity, I'm happy to meet with you and or present to your association and or business. So let's jump right in then. So Amanda.
So when we were talking about how we were going to structure this presentation, it was really funny because I said to Brian, I mean, anybody who works with their spouse probably understand this. You kind of have to take two different sides because you don't want to be tripping over each other. And I kind of wanted to play bad cop in this scenario. I wanted to talk about the things that you need to think of to make yourself careful, because it's exciting, right? When we see new technological advances, we want to embrace it and we want to dive in head first. And that's a great sentiment. But there are definitely things that we need to consider. And if we're cognizant of what it means to be a business owner, we really, have all of those weights on our shoulders. So, I wanted to kind of go through and discuss those. So the first thing I want to talk about, obviously, is going to be copyright. So the way that AI usually works is they have a data source. And in the case of something like ChatGPT, they're not exactly always transparent about where that data source comes from. They say the internet, they say their database, where they're getting that information from. It's not always 100% clear. So we need to be aware that when we're asking it to create something for us, we should be verifying, like, for example, if you have a letter or a text or something that you've asked it to generate, you should then go out and look for snippets of that. Just do a quick Google search and make sure that you don't find that in an article somewhere. If it references something, you can also just, find your own verification in terms of, does the internet support? Can you find an article supporting what it says, so that you're making sure that what you have is truthful and it's not a verbatim, a whole paragraph from someone else's already published article. And then, you have to think about the legal impacts between both text and photos, whether or not you use something that is made by somebody else. You might think it's no big deal, it's just for internal, but copyright laws are not in line with AI and how it works at the moment. And you're actually seeing there's actually major cases right now in the court system in the United States specifically that are actually talking about that. So they actually have, and I think I have that a little bit later, but they actually have issues with hallucination as well, and whether or not things can be truthful. So you need to be verifying. The same as if you had an employee and they made something for you, and you might want to do a double check, or you might check their credentials. You should think of AI in that same way. The other piece is IP, so intellectual property. The intellectual property that you have within your organization, if you had a document that said exactly how to do something that was customary or proprietary to your organization, I would not want to go ahead and put that into any kind of ChatGPT or AI model, because that's not something that you want to have added to their database. And I'm not saying that every time it does, but if you wanted to hedge on that side of being careful, that would definitely be something that I would be careful of. The liability is that other piece. So I think if anybody pays attention to the news, they would have seen the article that came out not that long ago, how Air Canada was actually sued because they promised something through a chatbot that was run by an AI. So the company who made the chatbot isn't liable. The company who's said, yes, this is, the service, they're the ones who are liable. So, you want to make sure that you're building in, and this goes into the next part, you're building into your contracts, or you're building into whatever you're using, that this is part of it. I'm not there yet, Brian, that this is part of it. And this way you have, you're kind of covered. So you're not in that same boat. You might have to have a different statement of work. It might have to be, a clear declared line in terms of what's on your chat bots or whatever that you're using, to make sure that people understand, that, that is an AI that they're dealing with, and that to get human verification. Right. And that's, like I said, something you want to talk to your lawyer about. I think that it's really easy to kind of think about all the ways that we can use it, but we need to make sure that we're putting those protections in the same ways we get insurance on anything else. We have the insurance of speaking to legal professionals and people who are in the industries to be able to know what the current, rules are, and make sure that you're abiding them. I'm good for the next. So when we talked in the last slide, or I was talking about where do they get the data from? So that's that available data versus like proprietary data. You can actually, and Brian will touch on this, you can actually use, many different ways to use AI in general. I think he's going to focus mostly on ChatGPT, which again, I'll talk about in the next slide as well. But a lot of the language models that are out there, they're using the internet to scrub the data. So the court case that I mentioned before with Air Canada is one example, but you can actually look at another one from Getty Images. So they were found to have images that were generated by, I'm trying to remember the name. I actually probably shouldn't name the company. There was a company that was out there that was generating images using Getty Images, which is a huge stock photography website where people get paid in order for other people to license their work. But they were using that as how they made the image generation. And the problem with that is that the original creator wasn't getting any kind of piece of the pie. So we're going to have a whole big, larger conversation about, what that looks like in the courts, and what that looks like to make sure that artists are still getting paid. But that is not settled yet. So, those items are being put into these learning models. And as the pioneers, if you're not careful, not only could you be putting your data in there and, putting it out there open for everybody else to kind of use, but you also could be, unknowingly using someone else's work without proper accreditation. So there's a couple of ways to handle that, and we're going to go over that in the next slide. So if you want to go ahead to the next one, Brian.
Sure. I just wanted to add one thing too. Just keep
Sure.
in mind that anything that's free is essentially you're the service. So if you're paying for a service, you can typically expect to have a degree of privacy and a degree of your information staying with you. But if you're using a free service, it's highly likely that they're going to be using your information to train the model as well. So keep that in mind.
That's why we say the transparency is key. Anytime you go through, you should look at your terms of service. I know it's boring. Nobody really wants to read through all the garbage, but you should look at the terms of service for items like that so that you can see what they're telling you that they're going to do, just to make sure that you have clarity on what that looks like. And, I think nobody really wants to steal anyway. So just being cognizant of it from the beginning, it's a good way to make sure that you're keeping your own ethics and morals in check. So when we talk, can you go ahead to the next one?
It's already on the next one is
Okay,
starting the next slide.
I have to match on mine. So the main thing that you can think of that would help with this was the private versus public, which is Brian was just talking about. So when you think about public ones, those are the free ones. ChatGPT does have a free model, it does have a paid model. And there are, there's Copilot that's just regular, there's Gemini, there's, I don't know, there you can list the list is
So many.
Pardon me?
There's so many.
So yeah, he was right. When, paid versus free is always key. And then you really need to get that privacy agreement clarity and know that, and it's not just true for AI. You should know this for every piece of software that you use, for everything that you use, because somebody going on a cybersecurity rant now. But if you get an app or use anything on the internet where it's free, you are the product. Your data is the product. So you just have to go into it knowing that, and then, hedge your bets. It's just like Facebook. They don't charge for Facebook. It's because they use the data on Facebook to, sell for businesses to use to bring people together, but then they obviously monetize that. So, there's a real cognizance that needs to be in place about what that means. Now, private versus public also means something different in terms of what you can control. And Brian will show an example of this when he goes through the examples, but you can actually create ChatGPTs that pull directly from your own internal knowledge base so that you don't have to worry about what I was talking about before with the veracity of the information that you're dealing with, because it's pulling only from what you've given it, right? So it'll use the learning models, so to speak, and it'll use your data and work from there. So you have a little bit more trust in it. It's not perfect. It's not foolproof. Like I said, AI will still hallucinate. There's still eccentricities about how, it processes data, but it is a really helpful way to know that. And I think, do you show Brian where you can see the button where it says that it's private?
Yes, I will. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And for your Copilot as well, it'll access what you point it to in SharePoint. So you have to keep in mind when we talk about private versus public, it isn't just, the internet you have to worry about. If you're using Copilot in your organization, you have to think about what permissions are set across the entire organization, because if employees can scrub and search for basically anything that they have access to, that's very different. If you have a whole drive full of folders for an employee to go through and search through every single one to get to how much everyone's salary is, that's a lot, right? But if you, could just ask Copilot at the touch of the hand saying, hey, is there any information on people's contracts or salaries that exist in SharePoint? That could be its own issue. So
Right.
definitely making sure that you have it pointed in the right ways and permissions are set properly is super important too for stuff like that.
Yeah, so I've got up on the screen, this is Microsoft's Copilot, and you'll see in the top right-hand corner that I have the protected icon there. That is because it is my enterprise account. And even if you're not paying for Copilot in Office 365, if you have Office 365, your login will work on Copilot as well. And so if you're logged into 365 and you go to bing.com and click on the Copilot button, it should say protected in the top right-hand corner if you're logged in. And that means all the information that you're feeding it is theoretically supposed to stay within your environment. There's been times where companies have said things are private and they end up not being, so just keep that and bear that in mind. And here, for example, you can search the web. I could choose to search my work folders, which I won't do because I don't know what's in there right now. So, yeah, so you could, if you're going to be paying for Copilot, I think is what Amanda was referencing, then you want to make sure that, you should make sure your SharePoint is set up correctly anyway, to make sure that people don't have access to the wrong data, but especially when you have Copilot.
Yes.
Okay, was there anything else we wanted to touch on as far as that?
No, I'm done being the bad cop for now.
All right. So I think we both touch on this part a little bit, Amanda, but there's definitely the question, should you use AI in your business today? Or should you wait? So before we dive into that, I just want to clarify a few things, which is AI versus automation, because a lot of people are getting these two mixed up. They're thinking they're both the same. AI is essentially a generative technology, meaning it's using large language models, and I won't dive into what that is. You can certainly search for what that means, but essentially it's generating content based off of information it has. So it involves, it could mimic human intelligence. It's learning, it's making decisions from data without any predefined rules, versus automation is technology that performs a specific task using a predefined rule set and it's typically used to improve efficiencies and reduce involvement in humans. So we use automation in our business all the time, and we're advocating for that with almost every business out there. If you're not using automation already, you should start looking at using automation and reach out for ways that we can help you with that. But today we're going to be strictly talking about generative AI, because I think that's what everybody's really talking about and asking about, and that's where a lot of the interest is. So should you use AI, Amanda?
So I scared you, but that doesn't mean I don't want you to not use it, right? So I want you to just be careful and, go into it with some safety nets in mind. But it is meant to be something that augments everything within your business, and ignoring it would be at your peril. You just need to be level-headed about it and kind of go in with a game plan, and make sure that that game plan isn't just something that you've been made aware of. And Brian will dive into this later, but you need to make sure that's communicated across your company to make sure that everybody understands what's allowed.
Right. Yeah. If you haven't provided your team with a framework yet on how they should be using AI and what they're allowed to use, and where they can upload data and use things, they are already likely using it, and they're probably putting you at risk, because if you haven't given them the instructions and how to use it and where to use it and the framework for it, they're probably just pasting stuff in the ChatGPT. And if they are, or any of the generative AIs, and if they're doing that, they might be sending information that's proprietary to you out to the cloud. And once it's there, right? Good luck getting it back. So just keep that in mind. You want to be giving them a framework or a policy on whether or not they could use AI. And my recommendation is, as soon as possible, put something in place so they can use it, so that they're not putting your data at risk. So I just want to add a couple more things here too. AI won't replace your staff. It'll help them become faster at routine tasks. And anybody who's going to resist AI, because there's a lot of us out there who are like, you know what? No, I'm really comfortable using this technology the way it is. I don't want to change. You'll likely find you and your organization a lot less productive than your peers in industry, because they're going to be using AI and they're going to be moving forward. So in the words of a really good colleague of mine, AI is going to be bigger than the opportunity for businesses today than the internet was for the businesses of the late 20th century. So do you really want to wait and let your competition overtake you? Do you really want to let this technology in the hands of just the people who are your competitors, and they're going to be able to be far more responsive, faster? They're going to be doing customer service a lot faster than you and utilizing these technologies. And again, we're not talking about replacing people. We're talking about making them more efficient at their job and improving efficiency and amongst our staff is probably one of the key ways that you can differentiate yourself from your competitors.
Well, based on that too, Brian, like we all know that labor shortages are a very real thing, but it isn't just a question of labor shortages. It's a question of bringing in people that can do, certain skills and replicating it. You have that one person in your company who's really good at something, and you always say, oh, I wish I could clone that person. Well, if you use AI in the right way and you have them, kind of turn on to what that looks like, then you can make them more efficient. It is like cloning them.
Okay. So just wanted to touch base really quick on a few of the pros of using AI. We've talked a little bit about them. It's a strategic advantage. You can certainly use it to adopt technologies, gain that advantage, improve efficiencies. You can make decisions faster, and you could even offer personalized customer experiences using AI. There's definitely a cost reduction, so you can automate tons of routine things that would normally take a human being a lot of time. But not only that, you're also making sure that there's no mistakes. So depending on what kind of technology you're using, if you do it the correct way, then you're going to be able to take routine tasks and make sure that they're done the same way each time, all the time, and that way you're not running into human error. You can make decisions fast. I think I talked about that. Innovate opportunities, so you can use it to talk to AI and generate ideas maybe you wouldn't have normally have had. So just using it to what I like to call soup starters. And as the technology gets better, ChatGPT 5 is going to be coming out at some point soon. And at that point there, you're really going to start being able to use this in your business, maybe after hours, where somebody can place a phone call and let's say you don't have any internal staff available after hours. It could start collecting and gathering information just by having a conversation with the person on the phone, and it's AI that's going to be able to do that for you. And we don't give any examples of that today, but we've seen that live up close and personal. And right now there's about a 5-second delay between the question you ask it and the answer it gives, but GPT-5 will reduce that significantly. So, Amanda, did you have anything else to add on this one?
I guess the other pro, and I know that you're going to give examples for business applications, but I'd like to give one quick one that's a pro in my world. If you are a parent or a grandparent and you have a child that you would like to have a story, there's nothing better than putting their name into ChatGPT and saying, write me a story about little Johnny going on an adventure to pick a place they want to go, and asking the child to help you with the prompt, and then having them write a bedtime story that you can read them, that's about them or something fun that they get to do or that they'd like to do. It's really cute.
Well, I actually, just for the fun of it, I gave it a prompt, and that's the one thing about ChatGPT you can do is, if the more information you give it, the more custom the story will be. So if you want to give names and places and what the storyline will be, it's definitely something that's really cool that you can do for your kids. That I personally don't have a great imagination, and so when my kids were young, I struggled coming up with cool stories I could tell them. This would make it like really, really neat. And then you can turn around and generate pictures of them, put it into a book, and print it at, wherever, Amazon or whatever, and then give it to them. And now all of a sudden your stories that you've told them are in a book somewhere, which would be pretty cool. I don't dive into that, but I generated that as a quick joke.
I just think the pros can be beyond the business stuff too. So I was like, oh, I'm going to mention that.
Yeah. All right, so we'll dive right in then. We'll just start talking about a few areas where you could use AI in your business. Again, this is surface level. We don't have a whole lot of time, so I didn't want to spend a terrible amount of time, but I wanted to show you what the power of what it can do. And I'm going to be concentrating on ChatGPT today, mostly because it's something that you probably already have available to you. Some of the features I'm going to be highlighting are paid options that you don't have access to through the free ChatGPT. So just keep that in mind. And Copilot uses ChatGPT in the background. So a lot of the things that we're going to be doing with ChatGPT, you can actually do directly in a Copilot too. So let's jump in. So the first thing I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about the prompt, because, and I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because a lot of people talk about this, but the prompt, how you tell ChatGPT what to do, will have a great impact on how it generates and the text it generates. So, you want to give as much clear instructions, contextual details, some descriptions of what you're expecting as the output, the tone of it, what mood, what kind of language they should be using. So is it going to be something that's going to be, a grade 6 language, or you're talking to a college level student, right? So what is the language that you want it to give? So I'll give you a quick example of a good, like a prompt that you could use. And that's, for example, here, what are the biggest AI breakthroughs in 2024? Give them 5 bullet points and 1 sentence long each for a layperson. So essentially the layperson is the style. So simple, technical, creative, formal, informal, and you can go on. You can even combine two, right? Be professional but friendly, or professional and aggressive, right? So you can change the tone of the output. How you want the format. If you don't tell it, it's going to randomly pick something. It might give you something short and sweet, or it might give you a 5-page novel on something. So if you are just looking for quick answers, then you want to tell it that. And the restrictions. So if you want it to be extremely detailed, 1 paragraph, 2 sentences, things like that. So I'm not gonna. Oh yeah. So I did generate this one, so you can see how it generated it. It gave me five different bullet points, and each one had a sentence long, so nothing too complex there. Another quick example of a prompt, and this one I actually have on the screen, is, for example, I gave it, you're an accountant speaking to a college level university student, describe what a P&L statement is, and then it generated sort of this, where it's this top one. So it's a little more detailed, a little more information that a college level student or university student would be able to understand. And then I asked it, okay, do the same, but for elementary student in grade 3. And so it generated something a little more simple, which is, imagine you have a lemonade stand, and it goes through a little bit of, on a simple, same exact question. The only thing I changed is who the intended audience is for. So your prompts that you're going to be using are fairly important. You don't want.
I just want to say, it's actually funny, and I think you're going to touch on this a little bit in the next slide, but prompt engineer is actually a title that you can find in job searches, and people, specifically, I would say more in like California or Silicon Valley, but it'll come everywhere else, are looking for people who know and understand how AI wants to receive information. And this is an actual job.
So there's a couple other things that you want to consider. ChatGPT is conversational, so you can engage it in a conversational way. You don't have to keep reprompting an entire new prompt every time. If it did something wrong or it fed something differently, you can just have a natural language conversation with it. So if it's too complex or too easy, you can say, hey, that was too easy. Can you make it, a little more detailed? Maybe increase the language to a grade 6 level. And it will regenerate it. Now, keep in mind, the longer you do that and the longer the conversation you have with almost all generative AIs, it starts to lose focus as to what the original question was. And so, you want to try to keep the conversation a little bit on the simple, like, short, because it will lose focus and it will start generating stuff you weren't even asking for, the longer you get away from the original question. So, one of the things that's really neat that you can do, I don't have an example here, but you can feed it your own writing style. So for example, if you, I do have an example. I think it was that story one I talked about. So the story example at the very, very top, I asked it, to create a story in the way that Eric Carle would. And it generated this, and then and I gave it this text, and then it generated this story. And then I said to it, okay, now do it in the way that Shakespeare would write. And all of a sudden it changed the style of it completely, right? It's a completely different story. And so if you want, what you can do is you can use, an author that you like as your baseline, or you can literally upload it an article or 2 or 3 that you've written in the past and say, analyze the structure of this article and pull out, what conversational tone it was, and it'll analyze it. And you say, okay, now in the next article I'm writing, I want you to use that tonality, that language. And so it will better match your own personal writing style. So, all right, so let's dive into some direct tests that you can do with specifically with ChatGPT. So one of the neat things that I like using it for is sort of like my personal assistant. I could ask it for feedback on any of my own writing, emails that I'm sending to a coworker. Perhaps I've written it and I'm like, you know what, I better verify, because sometimes, I might be in a bad mood and maybe I come off a little bit sharp or with words that I didn't intend. And so maybe I'll just send it a letter and say, hey, I'm about to reply to somebody who sent me this. Can you verify that I didn't, it's professional and friendly? And it'll do that. It'll rewrite it for you. It'll verify it. And it'll even give you some information as to why. So I have an example of, I'm hoping I have it here somewhere. You know what? I'm just going to copy and paste into a new text. So I'm going to start a new conversation with ChatGPT, and I'm going to show it a little bit something about a letter that I received, and it's just a phony one. I didn't actually receive this. All right, so here's a letter that I'm pretending I received from someone, and I want to have them answer it. And so I'm going to type in, and just cut and paste here because I didn't want to do this live. So I received this letter from one of my suppliers. Please generate a reply. I haven't seen this letter before, and I'll make sure that they get paid. And I'm in a bad mood, and I didn't want to accidentally tell them, I didn't get it yet. Leave me alone. So I'm going to tell it there's a letter. I pasted it below. And so it's now going to generate me a friendly reply saying that, hey, I didn't receive this. I'll get it paid as soon as I can. And I know that's a very simple thing that you can do, but I don't know about most of the people on this call, but I tend to need something as a soup starter in order to get started. And so I used to just send it to my staff and be like, hey, I want to write a reply to this. And it was like more of a technical thing. And, they would generate the initial text, and then I would just modify it to sound more like me. And so getting things started for me were very difficult. And so this sort of helps me get started. And anybody who has ADHD would probably understand what I mean. Sometimes getting started is the biggest struggle. And so this particular, it was still going. So for whatever reason today, it's a little on the slow side, but there's the letter it generated. I can just copy paste this as is, or I can make changes. I could even ask it and say, hey, that's too friendly.
Be more direct.
Please make it more direct, and it will redesign the letter. I won't stick around for it there, but
We don't have to use please, but we generally do use manners when talking to AI in case it becomes our boss one day, so.
yeah, you're right. Yeah. So you could use it to summarize lengthy emails or documents. So I have a document here that I pretended that I received at the beginning of the day today, and it's just a phony one. I actually had ChatGPT write it for me, and it was it's this letter that again, it's not a real letter, but it was just like a financial letter that I would have gotten from Jack Filippo, who's just a made up name. And I don't want to read it. It's, too long, didn't read kind of thing. So I can say, summarize this letter for me. And I just paste it and it will go and give me the summary. Sometimes it takes a little longer than it should, but it is what it is. Now I'm using ChatGPT 4. I probably should switch to 3.5 because it's a lot faster. So I'm just going to do that now. And you'll see it's a lot faster. So here's the and I'm like, oh, I still can't read that because it's not in point form. And right, so it'll redo it. And there's the hourly rate, and so I can ask it questions based on that. How much per hour, and it will give me some answers. Okay. All right. So that's just some of the things you can use it as a personal assistant. There's a ton more, but that's just a very quick example. So marketing, I believe that marketing is going to have the biggest impact, or the ChatGPT and AI, generative AI is going to have the biggest impact in marketing. But I do recommend that you use it as a soup starter and not just say, hey, generate me an article. And so we're going to be hopefully have a few people who would have submitted by now a couple topics that maybe we can just generate a quick social media content on. Dolores, do we have anybody who submitted anything?
I don't see any, but maybe we can
Okay.
tackle something like how we can
Sure.
enhance our networking skills.
Oh, okay.
It's like a
Yeah.
good fit.
So, all right. So what I'll do is I'll just I'm going to leave it ChatGPT 3.5. It's the older model, and it's a little bit on the faster side. ChatGPT 4 is more comprehensive and is better at generating more natural language, but a little on the slower side. So what was the topic you said? Networking skills, like social networking or computer networking?
Social, how we can enhance our networking skills.
Okay. So but pretend I'm going to be writing a social media blog about it. I'm going to say I'm going to be writing a social media blog about networking in a social setting. Is it professional, like a professional setting?
Yes.
And if I get typos, I'm just going to ignore them because it's okay. And I got to move my, sorry. Okay. Going to a lunch and learn. Give me 5 or 10 topics that I can discuss. Oh, I'm not doing a social media blog. Sorry. Oh yeah, let's just do that. Social media setting about going. Okay. All right, and so it'll just quickly generate 5 topics. And so this is the way I recommend that you use ChatGPT, is just getting it to give you some soup starters to say, you know what, I really like this networking tips. I would love to have a conversation about that. I would like to add that in my topic. So I can say using point number 4 and 7, generate 5 subtopics for each, and it will do that. And then you can turn around and, oh, it went a little more. Did I say 15? Maybe I said 15. Yeah. Yeah, look at that. It says 15. So now I can turn around and go, okay, you know what? I do like some of these. I can pull some of these out and say, okay, I want to have, 0.1, 5, 6, 8, and 15 and on the first one, and those, maybe a couple more on this one. And I can say, okay, generate me an article for LinkedIn on the top 5 of each. And so it'll do that. And again, it's probably not going to be the best. You're going to have to massage it. I didn't give it any kind of prompt as far as what language to use and who the audience is intended for. And so, you know, take that for what it is. I can turn around and say, you know, this is a business for business to business, or this is, you know, going to be for high level university professors, and it'll change the format of it.
Brian keeps using the term soup starter, and we actually had a chance to explain that a little bit before we started recording, but just for anybody who's listening now, it's just the same as it sounds like when you're cooking. You know, you start with certain flavors and you layer things in, and you know, you're trying to create something more complex. You know, whether or not you roast your bones, don't roast your bones, we're not in a cooking show, but the point is that you bring in different flavors and different spices because they all add a layer to the eventual soup, right? So your ChatGPT should just be your basics, your carrots, your celery, your spices that you have at the very beginning that you're really just using as the base. And then your personality and what you know in terms of your business are the things that you add in as other layers that bring that complexity,
right.
Eventual output.
Yeah. So you're going to take what the output is and just modify it and make it you, essentially. Yeah. Okay. So that's you know, I won't dive into blog articles and newsletter articles. You can do the same thing. I've seen people write an entire book in ChatGPT. And so one of the things about ChatGPT that a lot of people don't realize is that you can actually, if you have the paid version, you can actually explore GPTs, and you can go in and say, you know, I'm going to be doing writing, and these are GPTs other people have generated. And some people have generated, for example, a book creator guide. So you can come in here and start a chat with the book creator side. And so you know, it will work with you. And so somebody's made some custom things in there, probably give it like, you know, some pointers on how to write a book. And so if you're having a conversation with this GPT, it will be in that context. And so again, all soup starters, and you want to put your own flair on it afterwards. All right. One of the areas in marketing that a lot of people might want to use, the picture on the left, by the way, is just stock photo. That is not a generated photo, but I gave it a prompt, and the prompt is on the screen there. Basically depict a serene forest with 3 deers with a castle in the center of the photo, the deer on the right hand side, so on and so forth. I won't read it. You can certainly do that. I did give it an aspect ratio, and I did say it's photorealistic, and I did tell it to use a wide angle shot. And so the picture it generated was this. Pretty cool. It actually has, so I told it that I wanted to have a waterfall. I don't see a waterfall. Oh, it's on the right hand side. I did tell it to put it on the left, so it kind of started there, and that's fine. Or did I say to put it on the right? I might have said it on the right. Yeah, I didn't specify where the waterfall is, so it put it on the right. And the time of day was morning, and I wanted to have the forest, the mountains behind, and so on and so forth. So it generated this image, and then I said, you know what, it's a little too close up for me. I want it a little bit further back. I want to have a little bit backward. So I just gave it one extra prompt, and I said, make it a bird's eye view instead, and it generated this photo here. And so you can certainly change the photorealistic and change it to more cartoonish. So I actually wanted to just show you what it would look like if we were to do that. So I've got the original conversation here that I was having. Oh yeah, there it is. So I actually had it generated portrait because I wanted a portrait version of it, and I was playing around with it. And so let's just say instead of photo realistic, make it cartoon like. I don't know, have a clue what this will generate, and it does take a while to generate, and so I'll leave that generating in the background because it could take a little bit, and then I'll just jump over to the next topic because I know we're pressed for time. So all right, so finance, where could we use this in finance? I might not be able to go through all of the examples that I gave, but I'll show a couple of them. One of the really cool things I found that you can do with ChatGPT is you can convert photos of information to a table. So here's what it generated for the cartoon, by the way. So a little bit different. Doesn't look quite like photorealistic, which is great. Okay, so for the example, I'm trying to, nope, it was this one. This one? No, sorry. No, might not have it. Okay, so I'll okay, so one of them is to take a photo and convert it to a list of assets. So I just took a photo that was up on the web, and I said I need to have generate a list of all the assets that are in here that's over $50, and it quickly built one out. So imagine you had like a lot of stuff in a room, and you're preparing for insurance, and you know I don't really want to manually do this myself. You could take a photo of it, upload it to ChatGPT, and say, hey, generate a list of this. If anything, it looks like it's over $50, and it's subjective, of course, and it might not catch everything, but it's going to give you definitely a list that you can work through. Another one is review documents to extract key information. So that one, did I?
Financial health.
Yeah. Right. So financial health analysis. So I essentially asked it, I uploaded it a financial now a balance sheet from just Excel. I just literally went and copied and pasted it. So you'll see that on the screen, here's my Excel document. I just copied the entire contents of this all the way down the line. It does take a while for it to do this part. And I asked it for a very simple, just tell me if you see anything that's of concern. And so it went through a bunch of things here, and it brought up a bunch of concerns. So in finance, if you had something, you can turn around and ask ChatGPT to look for it. And it did. And I even asked it to generate me a graph about the data, and it was able to generate this graph. Whether it's useful or not, I'm not an accountant, and I don't know what kind of graphs would make sense and what kind of graphs would be very handy to have. But imagine this in Excel. Once you're using Copilot, you can turn around and say, hey, I want a pivot table, or I want to have a graph financial dashboard of the data that's in this Excel document. And Copilot would go and take care of it for you, built right into Office 365. So that's another quick example. I wish I had the one about pulling the is this one? Yeah, this is the one. Okay, this is what I wanted to show. So it's an image of just somebody who has chicken scratches, and they said, here's my P&L for last year. And as an accountant, you're like, oh my gosh, I got to try to use that. I just uploaded it and told it to create a table out of it, and it generated this. And then I was able to ask it some questions like, what's the net income? And it was able to do math and figure that out. And so kind of a neat thing to do, where if you want to just take an image and get it to generate the table for you, then you can just copy and paste this directly into Excel and carry on. You don't have to manually type it all out. So a very handy way that you could use it in finance. All right, and I'll dive in really quickly in operations because I know we're pressed for time. So one of the neat things I did for this presentation is I created my own GPT. So down below, I can just click on my name and say customize my GPT or create one. So I created this employee manual. I'll modify it so you can sort of see the oh, can I modify it? All right, I won't modify it now, but I'll create one. So I uploaded essentially all the documents for our employee manual, and you can publish this with a public link. And so, I'm just going to ask it what the dress policy is, and it should generate it based on my company's dress policy. It's going to search through the knowledge that I've uploaded it, and it's going to generate that information. Now, I've restricted it to only utilizing the documents I uploaded, so it's not going to go out on the web, and it's not going to grab information from the general information. It's a little slow because it is diving into our documentation, but it will give essentially the what we have for the employee dress code. If I wanted to ask it, a question on health and safety, I can do that. It's essentially our entire manuals in there, and so if we didn't want to have to give or want our staff to be able to search really quickly without having them to go through the policy and actually find it, because it could be buried deep in somewhere. You can actually publish ChatGPT with all of your knowledge base across your entire company, how you do it, all the SOPs, everything like that, and then ask it for what's the SOP for when a client wants to change a password, and it would go and pull that information out, and you can have it reference it as well. So I don't know in this case if it didn't reference it, the document, but I could turn around and say, what page was that on? And I don't know if it'll give me the right answer because I don't remember what exactly yeah, there you go, page 35. So you could program the GPT and say, every time somebody asks a question, make sure you reference where it is in the document, so that if it hallucinated, you can then say, like, the information's on page 35, go and check it there, just to make sure you got the right information. So
Yeah, and I mean, you use the employee manual, but you could do that for any of your how-to documents in terms of doing anything technical. And when the person asks the question, the problem that we run into right now is that any search that's done is done in the language of the person, and it has to usually hit the exact same, for any regular search, it would have to hit the same naming scheme that you originally put in. ChatGPT allows you to look at the context of the entire document and be able to search to find something that could be even remotely related. It doesn't have to be exactly the way it was worded.
you can even have it to help you generate SOPs and policy documents based on what it has out there in its knowledge base. And you can generate, a project plan, so you can, upload the entire, what you're planning on doing, and it will generate a rough draft of a project plan that you can then utilize. And it will even draft it in month 1, month 2, month 3, kind of give you a timeline for it. So I will leave it at that and just jump in for questions and answers, because I know we're pressed for time. Yeah, Dolores.
All right, what a great presentation. Thank you, both of you. That was so interesting. It kind of blows my mind because it kind of terrifies me. It's so big and there are so many applications, but I think there's a lot of pitfalls too. And I think we just really need a lot of guidance on this to make sure that we're using it right. We haven't had any questions submitted by our attendees, but I'll throw one out there.
Sure.
So, we talked about some of the writing, the photos. How do you think this might impact some professions? Like in my mind, there might be professions that don't exist 5 or 10 years from now because AI can do it.
So I'll jump in real quick with that one. I believe anybody who's in the customer service area will be highly impacted, because you can create chatbots that have all of your knowledge on how everything works in your organization and common questions and answers, and restrict the model to that information, and then have essentially an AI receptionist or an AI customer service agent answer questions, while a live human being could be looking at 10 different conversations that the AI is having, just to make sure that there's a little oversight. But now one person is essentially having, dozens of conversations and just watching the AI to make sure it doesn't misspeak. And maybe that'll even go away in the future as well. That's just one area. What's that, Amanda?
I don't think it should. I think that you're hitting on something, Dolores. I don't think that the professions will go away. I just think the efficiency of the professions, like Brian highlighted, of being able to use their knowledge and expertise. The real interesting part is, how do we then translate it to the next generation after that? Because it's going to be less transactional between human and human, and there's going to be a computer in the way. There's lots of things to consider. There's jobs that exist now that, like, we didn't even know 5 years ago would be a job. So I can't even imagine 10 years in the future, there's going to be so many things that will pop up from it. So that's why we always like to say to embrace it, because if you are a person who can understand how to use your role and translate it into AI and being the kind of like the predictor of where it goes, then you're going to have more control than if you kind of go, oh, that's it, I'm done.
Yeah.
Well, I never heard of a prompt engineer until like just a little while ago. So there you go.
Yeah. And some of those folks are getting paid quite handsomely, working for some of the bigger organizations who are generating custom AI bots and custom AI agents for larger organizations. They have to be very, very specific on what they're putting in there to make sure that they're not held legally liable for anything, and that there's no working around the AI model to fool it into doing something it's not supposed to. Right. So
yeah. So we did get 2 questions from our participants while we were discussing. The first one is Dave Augustine. A couple of times you mentioned AI hallucinating. Do we know how often it does that? Always? Question mark?
No, not always.
Okay.
There isn't statistics. You'd expect the places to be able to give you, transparent data, but that's not something they're willing to do right now. But I don't know, Brian, do you know of any specific numbers? For me, when I've used it, I've only had it happen to me twice.
I don't have numbers, but there are things that you can do to reduce the amount of hallucination. And so what happens is, a lot of the times ChatGPT just wants to be helpful. And I know it sounds weird, like in the AI, time. If it doesn't know the answer, it might start trying to make stuff up. And so your best bet is to prompt it with, especially if you're trying to work on something that's like either legal or something that, you know, it has to be exact. And you'll notice when I brought over the Copilot one, it had that in there. You know, down below, I don't know if it's still there. I can't see because I've got something in the right. No, yeah, right here, creative or precise. So you can change the style that it is. But one of the things you can do to prevent or reduce hallucination is if you don't know the answer, just tell me. Like, don't try to create it, you know, on the fly and get creative. So you have to be able to prompt the GPT correctly. Like, I want precise information, or you can, you know, tell it, okay, we'll get creative, and now it's gonna use its imagination, right? So most of the time you kind of like fall in between and you kind of let it be balanced. But if you're doing something that requires very high level of specificity, you can even ask it to you know, give references to where they got the information.
You know, I'm thinking ahead. I think maybe a year from now, we need to do a lunch and learn on prompts. Prompts. We'll mark that down. We
Yeah.
do have a couple more questions. From Marianne, will this generate social media posts with copy and hashtags?
It will, yes. So yeah, Amanda, did you want to jump in there? Sorry.
Yeah, so you can actually ask it for things like if I was looking for this audience and I wanted to hit this demographic and I want to know what's trending in that area, it'll go out and it'll look for whatever data is out there, because there's plenty of websites that do that, that'll post it, but there's multiple of them. So they'll go out and find that information, and you can ask it for what hashtags would be most beneficial. Again, I always recommend changing the voice a little bit, even if it's just changing the words, but it'll definitely do that. It'll come up with an entire month's worth of content if you ask it to.
Great. Okay. I have one more question here. 5 years ago, thought leaders had said that everyone should learn coding. Yet the CEO of, I can't quite see it, NVIDIA, recently said you
NVIDIA,
don't,
yeah.
recently said you don't need to learn coding post AI. Your code is your business. Any truth to either view?
Oh, wow. Okay. Can I take this first, Brian?
Sure.
So this is actually something that's come up in our conversations quite a bit, because obviously, speaking at industry events, a lot of what we talk about is very technical. And one of the things that they've done as demonstrations right from the stage is, like, if you look at the code that's generated, it's great, but it has errors. And, you know, I don't think the average person needs to be technical, but there does still need to exist the knowledge of how code should be built and proper structures, and I guess good etiquette, hygiene, whatever, because you can actually trick AI into creating code for you that can be quite malicious. And you can also have errors that exist within that. So keeping in mind that it pulls from everywhere, you kind of have to be able to discern. That's the human element of AI that's really important, that we can't lose. I don't know if I would agree with saying that, you know, people don't need to know it. I don't think everybody needs to know it in order to be able to move forward and do anything effective. You can go into Copilot and have it do scripts and all kinds of things. But if you don't understand what you're asking it to do, if you don't understand the impact and implications, I think that's a bit of a concern as well, right? So you have to have the knowledge behind it, because it could be quite dangerous what you open yourself up to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. That
To
makes sense.
answer the previous question, I had it generate me an article here for leadership, and it created the hashtag. So you know, just a quick example of that one. And to jump on what the question from Dave, yes, I mean, Amanda nailed it pretty much on the head. What I like to say is, again, soup starters, right? So instead of saying generate me a piece of code that will do all of this stuff, you could say, you know, I'm working on a piece of software and I need a module, or I need a small section to do this. Can you generate me the code that will do that? And then you take that and put it in your greater application after verifying that it's secure and that there's no hold. And you want it to make sure you put documentation along the way. So highly document the code that you generate. So you would prompt the ChatGPT or whatever AI model you're using to do that. But
if you don't know what you're
everything.
doing, then that can be more difficult. So that's why I say it's good to have that foundation before starting to mess with that, because it could be very dangerous.
And that's today. In 5 years, who knows? All bets are off, right? It could potentially generate itself. I don't know.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's why we say use, please, and thank you.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, exactly. You're right. Well, just as we wrap up, I just want your thoughts on one final thing. So this morning it was announced that AI would be used to supplement judging at the Summer Olympics happening in Paris. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
I think, okay, so it depends on what you're judging. If you're judging whether or not somebody passed the stop, passed the line before another person, I mean, AI can certainly be handy for that. If you're talking about judging a figure skater, I mean, what I would imagine that they're going to be using is, highlight the areas where I need to be paying attention to, and then it will bring you to that part in the recording or whatever, if they're allowed to use recordings. I don't know. I don't know the context either, but I think it will augment people being able to make decisions on scoring. But more importantly, if it's like a clear cut, yeah, that person passed before that person by this many seconds, then that's an easy one, right? AI will be far more effective at that. I actually saw a video of an AI that had a security camera on a coffee shop, and it was tracking all the employees, who was making the coffees, how many they had made, how long the staff were waiting for the coffee, how long they were in the shop. The customers, how long they were in the shop. And it was one employee who looked really busy. He was walking around doing a lot of things, but like he wasn't actually making coffee, he wasn't actually doing anything. And so it was like customer serve 0, right? And so, can the technology be used to judge human actions and human interactions? Absolutely. Should it do it on its own? Probably not.
Well, there's also biases that are still currently built within it, and there's some like in everything else that's out there. There's some considerations in the technology that don't consider different races, different genetic makeups, and so I think we have to be cognizant of that. But then again, in the same breath, I mean, could we argue that human judging in sport and the Olympics has been completely fair and transparent going as in the past? No, not so. So I think it's much like everything else we've said. The balance between human and AI would be, I think, a nice blend, so it helps complement each other.
Yeah. Well, what a fascinating hour we've just spent together. Thank you so much, Amanda and Brian. It's always a pleasure. You've given me a lot to think about. Some of it pretty scary, but thank you. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Make sure to check out next month's Lunch and Learn on May 28th. You'll get all of the details in your What's Up Wednesday, so look for it. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.